Nope, just goes for the permafrost here.
Yeah, and I think this is fine, just going for the permafrost here. I mean, you're going to force HiThar to jump.
You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
Welcome back, everybody, to Season 6, Week 1 of the Eternal Tournament Series. We've got, we're in round 2, and we've got another exciting matchup for you. We got two Argenport decks facing off. Do you want to talk about, introduce them for us, co-caster Rhino?
Yeah, sure. So we've got on one end HiThar, who is on Argenport aggro. Normally, HiThar known for bringing Combray. That's kind of his safety pet deck. But branching out, trying some new things as it is a new season. You got plenty of time before the Invitational to test things out in the field. So HiThar bringing Argenport aggro, super low to the ground, Bartolo with weapons, right? Paladin Oathbook, Beastcaller's Amulet, Bloodletter. So we're used to seeing Argenport decks with a bit more expensive weapons like Hammer of Might and Lethrai Falchion. This one's going cheaper, 3-cost weapons, more 2-drops to have potentially more explosive openings with District Infantry or Instigator into Amulets, a combination we've seen in the past, or Instigator with Bloodletter, like just good 2-drops with good weapons on 3, or Bart or Paladin. On the other end, we've got Eichel Lysim, or hoping I pronounce that correctly. It's on Argenport mid-range. So we've got a pair of Argenport decks here, but they're quite a bit different. They're both playing Bartolo the Seducer and Paladin Oathbook and Argenport Instigator, and that's about where the similarities end, as Eichel's going quite a bit higher on the curve. We've got Vera, we've got Grimva, we've got Harsh Rule, Stone Powder Alchemy, Spirit of the Past. So lots of big bodies on the top end, and the mid game is really just Piercing Grief and Devour things to just gain life and dig for all these pieces. And if you get a little too far behind, Harsh Rule resets the board. But you still have 3 Barts and a Lethrai Falchion, because why the hell not give you a free win here and there? But really it's about, Slumbering Stone with Piercing Grief and Devour as your early game, transition to the mid game, and then like Grimva and Vera finish the game off once you've stabilized. So quite a bit different strategies, even though they're both Argenport. And I got to know, who do you like here?
So in game 1, I like HiThar, I think. So both decks are... HiThar's deck is using some cards we haven't really seen that much of, but the overall strategy is pretty similar to other Argenport mid-range decks we're familiar with. And I think he's just going to more consistently get out threats. And even after a Harsh Rule, it's not like Eichel's deck is much better at playing threats than HiThar. It just depends. He's just going to have the knowledge of Harsh Rule. So as long as HiThar doesn't get blown out by Harsh Rule, I think it's pretty in the favor of him. But post board, we have some interesting choices that we'll talk about when we get there.
Yeah, the one notable thing HiThar doesn't have that generally would be very useful in an aggro versus mid range or control matchup is Protect. Those are in HiThar's sideboard along with Sabotage. So he won't have anything like Protect to hold up. Eichel doesn't have to worry about Protect as far as making sure Harsh Rule and Slay work. But HiThar has 4 Barts, and the only way Eichel has to really kill them is Slay, or Vera's Favor plus Slay, something like that. It's really hard to do. Eichel doesn't have a lot of ways to ping it. No Valkyrie Enforcers on their side either. So Bart could be a problem. The rest of HiThar's deck, I think Eichel can handle, and we'll see how that goes as the game is underway.
Yeah, so I'm fully expecting Eichel to play, to draw his 1 of Lethrai Falchion and throw that on a Bart and just demolish HiThar in this ridiculous series of events. But we just have both players passing back and forth. Eichel just playing 2 Shadow Sources, hiding his Justice.
Well, Eichel didn't have a Justice Source, but now drew an Argenport banner off the top and is going to jam this Oathbook down and turn his Instigator into a 4/4. Normally that'd be like, oh, maybe you're putting in range of Vanquish. HiThar doesn't play Vanquish. HiThar's only removal is 3 Slay. The rest of it is a couple Vera's Favor and some Finest Hour just to push through your units that have weapons on. It's about ignoring what your opponent's doing and just making your own units big enough to care, as we see Bartolo come down here for HiThar on 3.
That makes a lot more sense now that I'm actually watching Eichel and not watching HiThar twice.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting mirror, but yeah, we've got your screen set up well. Hopefully, it's also set up correctly on stream as we see a Piercing Grief come down, get buffed by this Oath Book, and then devoured. Eichel's got to hope that Piercing Grief doesn't come back right away, as it'll just die on end step, which is always a little funny to see. But yeah, we see Eichel picks up a Seek Power and a Steward of the Past. Still have it 4 for him.
So how do you feel about Piercing Grief in this matchup overall?
It is what it is, right? It's just kind of this gain spell that can get you value in spots, but isn't doing a whole lot else. I'm not the biggest fan of Piercing Grief in that it's not giving you any board presence at all. It's purely like just tempo, like you're just getting short-term value. As Eichel draws another Sigil off the top, we'll just plop down a Steward of the Past as Bart gets double buffed by Oathbook. So a 4/4 this turn, but it's going to be a 6/6 at least next turn, assuming HiThar doesn't draw a weapon or something else to augment Bartolo here.
Yeah, with this slaying HiThar's hand, I'm really favoring this race for him. I mean, he is quite a bit lower, but
yeah,
this Bart, it can't be blocked. Also, back on the subject of Piercing Grief, I have been a vocal hater of Piercing Grief. I think it is a worse card than Water of Life.
Generally, it is. I would agree. But at least here it became a 4/2, and it'll come back. You're playing it with Devour, but you are jumping through a lot of hoops to make it an acceptable card. Again, I've never been that impressed by it, but I like that people are still experimenting with it. It's a very interesting card, and something that brings a lot to the table, especially when you're playing something like Hero of the People. That's where I can tolerate Piercing Grief. We don't see that here. It's really just, as you said, a life gain card. If it came back here and gained, 5 life, whatever, that would have been cool. But instead, we just see a Slumbering Stone, which will just get paired with a Steward as Eichel's getting beaten down by this Bart that continues to grow. But in the meantime, HiThar is at 5 or at 12 and about to go maybe lower. No, HiThar opts to double block, take out the Steward, take 2 damage.
And I like that play. I really like that play because it stops the Argenport trigger. The Steward stops the Argenport trigger, so it just takes no damage, and it just solidifies like his clock much or that. It slows down the clock from Eichel. Eichel has to go through a lot of hoops to put down any sort of lethal threats now.
Yep, Bart is presenting lethal next turn. Hits for 8 here, would hit for 10 the turn after. So Eichel's got to find a Slay or a Harsh Rule here as he used Vera's favor to pop the Aegis on Bartolo. And we'll see what the top of Eichel's deck brings as HiThar slams down an Impending Doom. Another Vera's favor is not going to get it done.
That's not enough. That is a 2 life, 2 few.
Yep, and as we said, I think Eichel's deck was a little weak to Bart, and we saw that play out here. Bart just swinging through over and over. Eichel does not have the removal to deal with it, and simply gets outraced. That it would have been nice to see that, Piercing Grief come back, but it's not Water of Life. You can't gain 6 life off whenever you want. You gotta wait for it to come back. Piercing Grief simply not showing up again to get Eichel that 4 extra health.
Yeah, notably Eichel, running 4 Slay and 4 Harsh Rule, but that's the only removal he's really running. So dealing with Aegis is a huge problem. Yeah, again,
only has 2 Vera's favors, even pop the Aegis. And as we mentioned, doesn't even have Valkyrie Enforcer or something like that you normally see out of Argenport. Instead, just has a bunch of
Vanquishes.
Yeah, it has a bunch of units that are designed to block and chump block, and then you have the life gain to help buy you time. As we said, Vera and Grimva hopefully brings it on home. That plan does not work against Bartolo. You're not blocking. You're not chump blocking. You are purely racing Bart. That just isn't a good plan to have. As we go to sideboard here, what do you expect to come in for Eichel to try and help this out? He's got some more lifesteal units and Suffocate, I guess. I like Suffocate.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to talk about, is getting into the sideboard, because I think Eichel's sideboard plan is really interesting, and it makes the Piercing Griefs make a little bit more sense. He's got 4 Oathbreakers and 4 Cabal Cutthroats, so he can go super heavy into this Oathbreaker plan, which might be what he has to do to sort of race what HiThar's doing. On the other side of the board, HiThar's got the protects, which I like, the sabotages, which I like, and I think Runehammer just misses too many things. So he might bring in the Reapers just because they are another flying threat, another evasive threat.
Mhm.
But for the most part, you don't need to mix up too much. Finest Hour is a little bit awkward in the matchup, so maybe he'll be taking out Finest Hours and just trying to throw in maybe some extra
Annihilates or
something.
vanquishes. Yeah, something like that. I could see that as well. So yeah, I think Eichel is going to go into this lifesteal sideboard plan and maybe go a bit leaner. But the biggest thing here is the 4 suffocates. This isn't like HiThar's deck is like Rakano in a way that you're building up a unit with weapons, but your units will all naturally be in suffocate range other than Impending Doom, Minotaur, Lighthoof, right? Valkyrie Enforcer, Bartolo, Tinker Overseer, Auric Bully, Argenport Instigator, District Infantry, all of these die to suffocate until you buff them with an Oathbook or until you put a Bloodletter or Beast Caller's Amulet on it. And it's those little windows that you'll have access to. That suffocate is just really, really nice to have access. So I expect all 4 of those suffocates to come in and have a nice impact on.
Yeah, I agree. And you definitely want all 4 because you want them in the early game.
Yeah, you want them in the early game. They'll be fine in the mid game too. If your opponent's threatening to buff something with Oathbook, you hopefully suffocate it before it gets the chance to attack, stuff like that. There are spots where it is bad once the unit is alive and gets a weapon on it, it gets out of suffocate range, and then you got your other cards to do their things. But I think disrupting HiThar's early game is what you want to be doing. Eichel's from Eichel's perspective. So I expect some suffocates to come in and do some work as just another, even just a cheap way to pop the Aegis on Bart. Even if it doesn't kill Bart, you at least pop the Aegis so that Slay can kill it or Harsh Rule can kill it, if you're assuming those, which I have to imagine will be.
Yeah, and I don't know if Stream can see it, but I'm taking a look at HiThar sideboarding right now, and he has done basically what we talked about, which is cut the Finest Hours, bring in those protects, bring in some sabotages even.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he might have brought in some. How many vanquishes is he running?
I saw Umbran Reaper come in from HiThar, which is a little sketchy against a Steward of the Past deck, but still is a 5/1 flyer that can get you immediate value and is good harsh rule protection.
Yeah, like I said before, I think that just more evasive threats is where HiThar wants to be.
Yeah, I think it's better than something maybe even, I don't know if he kept in the Lighthoof or not, but even one of your cheaper units, The one thing that bringing out Finest Hour does negate is Finest Hour is a way to also protect against Suffocate, but I think I agree that's a little too cute. Instead, just get higher quality threats.
Yeah, I'm generally not a big fan of Lighthoof at all, so I think bringing in Umbran Reaper over that is pretty good.
I love Lighthoof, especially against this deck where their plan is to chump block and devour, and they can't chump block something that's unblockable. So, Lighthoof's at its best in Feln, but I like that people are trying it, especially when you can just load up a bunch of weapons and Oathbook on one unit and give it unblockable to get over. But speaking of games, this one's underway as players are developing their power. HiThar's got the Bartolo and Plate lurking in hand, but also just plays out a 2/2 flyer here that gets Oathbook.
Yeah, so we have HiThar on the play playing the Tinker Overseer, and then Eichel playing his Cabal Cutthroat, and then HiThar having the Oathbook right there to back up the Tinker Overseer. But it's going to get slayed. Yep.
Tinker Overseer does get out of Suffocate range there because of Oathbook. Instead of just being simply a 3/3 when it swings, it becomes 4/4. So Eichel has to take their whole turn to cast Slay here rather than getting down another unit. And now Impending Tomb comes out. And Eichel is looking at not a great hand right now for facing down this Impending Doom. Might play out the Piercing Grief anyways, just to get the 3 life gain. We'll see, but now to hold it. And HiThar found another Bartolo. Not the best card to have multiples of, but could still do quite a bit of work here and just abandon the Oathbook.
He might want to save the Piercing Grief to get plussed by Oathbreaker, but I don't think he's going to have enough time. And double Bartholo.
Yeah. HiThar, though, more notably finds a Valkyrie Enforcer, and that'll silence one of these lifesteal units. And then if we see Oathbreaker come down here, HiThar's got the Slay for. So this is lining up really well for HiThar game.
Yeah.
Ooh. Instead, we see the Suffocate come out with the Piercing Grief, and Eichel trying to, again, keep the race alive and get in a nice swing. 7 damage and gains.
Yeah, so this is what we're talking about with HiThar just having the better on-curve threats.
Ooh.
And even if Eichel draws out of this with something like a Harsh Rule, that's 2 Aegis units that he's got in his hand, and an Entomb now with Umbran Reaper. So this is going to be very difficult for Eichel.
Yeah, I was going to say that was a big win for Eichel there, getting the Slay to be pointed at that Cabal Cutthroat. But HiThar, it probably was his best play. Like the only other option is to play out a Bart, and here we see HiThar top decked an Amulet. So not only swings for 1 extra damage, taking Eichel down to 6, but now has a 5/5 in play to block this Oathbreaker. And yeah, not looking good for Eichel here. Will gain 5, but the best spot. And actually, by ace spacing here, HiThar can simply not block, or yeah, just eat the 2/2 and have a lethal crackback because Eichel has no follow.
Yeah, that'll be game. And I just realized that HiThar only had 4 power and couldn't play the Umbran Reaper at all. But,
yeah.
you know, that wasn't important.
No, HiThar was in a spot where if he drew power, could play Umbran Reaper. Instead, drew Amulet, so Amulet's a better play than Bart there. Yeah, gets the win. So, yep, just big evasive stuff. Eichel can't really block it. Had a cool sideboard plan as far as, I'm going to gain life and race that way. But it didn't quite pan out. Drew a bit too much power compared to his opponent. Didn't have quite the right threats or removal. And ended up losing that. So a quick 2-0 from HiThar. We'll be moving on to the 2-0 bracket. Both players were 1-0. And we'll see if we can get a backup match in this round. I'll see what else is going on. We'll all right, yeah, I've got we're going to get a backup match. So what did you think of HiThar's deck there? Just a lean, mean killing machine? Were you impressed?
You know, I've seen a lot of versions of Argenport mid-range.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my favorite version, but it's definitely a pretty good one. I think overall it was just that Eichel's deck was a little too slow to set up what it was trying to do, and not as rewarding for what it's trying to do either. Like, even if you get all of the key pieces together, the reward isn't big enough for how costly it is.
I think the biggest thing there was it was a bad. I think that deck was designed to just feast on time-based decks that we've been seeing, like Praxis or Elysian or things like that. Okay, it looks like we're getting the go-ahead for the next match. I guess, are we... Hold on one sec. We've got Shed versus Chaated, and I believe we'll be observing from Shed's perspective. So this is Shed is on a spicy number here. For those that might watch my stream, you may have seen me playing with the original version of this deck, and Shed saw it and loved it and wanted to put his own spin on it, which naturally meant adding Pilfer to it. So this is Stokes is what I like to call it. I think Shed just called it like Stone Scar Midrange or Stone Scar Control or Stone Scar Flame Stoker. But the big thing is it's a Stone Scar slow control deck, lots of removal, and then tries to finish the game with Flame Stoker. Flame Stoker being the 6 cost relic that makes an Infernus every. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what Shed's done with the deck. Added Voprex and Pilfer, because why not? But the core is still there. Statuary Maiden, Steward of the Past, Stray into Shadow, Infernal Tyrant, Flamestoker. So some classic Felm mid-range or Stone Scar mid-range cards, but in a totally different setting. Meanwhile, Chaated is on Rakano Plate. I'm sure we're all familiar with that. Not a great matchup for Rakano, as Stone Scar is literally just a pile of removal. I'm seeing here as we're on turn 5 or 6. Chaated only has an Oni Ronin in play right now.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this Stoke Scar deck for the first time, and not only is it a pile of removal, but the threats that it plays are not like they're relevant. You can't just ignore them as Rakano because you've got Infernal Tyrant, which has lifesteal, and you'll be, with some couple cudgels on that or something, it's able to actually race Rakano instead of just being like, well, here's a Seraph, and I guess you'll just attack over me.
Yeah. The deck was just, especially with Armory falling by the wayside, just filling a deck with removal is not as big of a downside anymore. And it turns out that Stray into Shadow plus Infernus is a really cool combination because it either clears the board for Infernus, or if they block the Infernus, whatever did block, it's going to get finished off by Stray into Shadow. So the deck uses some really cool tools that we have been lurking in Stone Scar, as far as like things like Sleepless Night and Stray into Shadow that have just been waiting for the right deck. And as we see here, the board is cleared and the Infernus are now just finishing the game as Shed just sits with a Death Strike and Stray into Shadow in hand. Shed, the match is currently tied 1-1, so Shed is trying to win here. Double Infernus plus Vera's Favor will be lethal, and it looks like Chaated, I don't know what's in their hand, maybe some double fire cost cards or something.
I'm actually going to go take a look at Chaated's hand for us. So he's got a 10-10 Deforge plate lurking in his hand, which he cannot cast, and he has no units. He has a Protect and a Vanquish. So this is...
Oh, Protect, okay. Protect is very nice, but has to use double Torch here to kill one of these Infernus to not go into Vera's Favor range. And any unit Chaated does find is still not going to be large and is facing down double Flamestoker. So yeah, the Overseer comes down, but it's simply not going to be enough here as Shed is going to get 2 Infernus here onto the board. Can use Death Strike or Stray into Shadow. Yep, we see the Stray come down. Neg4. That'll probably prompt the Protect out of Chaated, but this is still 10 overwhelm.
It's only on the defense. Okay, so yeah, Chaated needed to have a second Fire Influence already to be able to play, and more power to be able to play the Deforge play and the unit in the same turn, but he didn't, and so Stokescar takes the match, I believe 2-1.
Yeah, Stokescar takes that one 2-1. I would say it's a favorite against Rakano. Rakano is pretty weak to a deck that's just playing a pile of removal. 2 Suffocates, 4 Torch, 4 Annihilate, 4 Vera's Favor, 3 Extract, 3 Death Strike, 3 Stray into Shadow. That's main deck. That's main deck removal for Stokescar. Again, it's just keep the board clear, let the Flamestokers do their job, and then you can do some really funny things with Statuary Maiden and Infernal Tyrant, especially with the weapons to put on them. Or you can even put the cudgels on the Infernus out of Flamestoker to get a bit more reach out of that boards. Really fun deck that I've really enjoyed playing on ladder, and I'm glad to see Shed showing it off at the ETS this week.
Yeah, and you're not even counting Pilfer. I mean, that's 2 more removal spells.
But anyways, we are out of backups, but it was fun to at least peek in on that matchup, seeing Shed move to 2-0 in the 2-0 bracket, and maybe we'll see him again later for a full match. At least that's our hope. But before we move on to the next round of coverage, I think we've got some other things to talk about here, and that is what we're doing. This is the ETS, the Eternal Tournament Series, brought to you by aReNGee Eternal. So this is just a weekly open series is what we're in the middle of right now. And after 7 weeks of open where anybody can register, anybody can play in, we cut to an invitational, which has lots of cash prizes and things like that. And then we eventually, at the end of all that, have a world championship. So if you like the action and you want to get in on it, you can go to aReNGeeeternal.com and register for a weekly open. They're every Saturday at noon, so you got to register a couple hours before that or the week leading up to it. But they are open to anybody that wants to play, first timers or 100th timers. It doesn't matter. You can play in them and just start getting your feet wet, or maybe even take one down. We've had plenty of players that even in their first tournaments have taken it down or gotten top 8 finishes. You just got to show up, register a deck, and play. But yeah, our next invitation will be at the end of this season, so that's the end of October 28th and 29th. We've got 7 weeks of open play before determining that invitational. There'll also be a last qualifier in the final week before the invitational. And then depending on how well you do in those, the annual championship with a $3,000 prize pool will be coming up not too long after that, towards the end of the year. So yeah, just go to aReNGeeeternal.com for more information and a full calendar of all the events. And maybe we'll even get to cast your match next time around. And with that being said, I think we're going to call this round to a close and get on for round 3 action in just a moment.